There's a lot to get to, but rapid fire, real quick, I want to get everybody's just initial impression about what stood out and what we might be talking about from what we learned today down the road. Natisha, I'll start with you.
Well, right off the top, Mike, I think it's the wiretapping. Anthony Lazzaro being used as an investigative tool by the investigators in this case. He had a meeting set up with Lee Anthony, Casey Anthony's brother. They had a car that was hooked up with not only audio, but also a camera inside the car. Now, he didn't find out too much from Lee Anthony in this. Some of the things he did find out contradict some of the things that Lee Anthony recently said in this deposition that he gave in the civil case. One of those things being that Zenaida Gonzalez is a name that he had never heard before. Now, in this, with Anthony Lazzaro, we find out that Lee says, well, Zenaida is a person who possibly hung out around the house.
Right.
So now this contradicting story, but I think it's very important that he was used as an investigative tool. And also, will this come into evidence once the trial happens?
Gotcha. Mike, we never heard anything at all. I read the whole transcript on Friday when all that came out, and there was not one mention. When he was asked about Zenaida Gonzalez, he goes, no, never saw, never heard of it.
Yeah.
So I think he impeached himself right there.
Gotcha. Marva, I know you've been pouring over the documents as well. What's standing out to you, Marva?
Well, some of the things that we were able to learn about the family, one of the private investigators talked a lot about George, how George was very distressed and had contemplated suicide as early as September. As we all know, he did attempt suicide back in January. He also talked a lot about George and Cindy's relationship, that it was very strained, and in fact, they argued quite a bit about Casey.
Yeah, James Hoover, that's a private eye, was not hired by the Anthony family, but somehow got in the mix there, and he tells some interesting details, to say the least. We'll get to some more of those coming up in just a minute. Let's get our attorneys in on this. Jane, as you look at and hear some of these details, what stands out to you?
What stands out to me is on the ex-boyfriend's MySpace, once again, this chloroform. We hear winning over a woman with chloroform. And what does that tell you? That tells you, it's like a date rape drug to him, and maybe that's what the chloroform traces in her car were all about, and maybe it's not the murder weapon as alleged.
Okay, so you're arguing defense there that Ricardo Morales is the source of chloroform and not Casey Anthony.
Well, I'm arguing that's where those hits come from on the computer, that's for sure.